It's time for another edition of Dome and Domer.
Hey, Irish fans, welcome back to Dome and Domer. This is the oldest Notre Dame sports podcast on the planet. I'm your host, Mike Sullivan. Joining me from the class of 1990, Mike Brammer down in South Florida, of all places this morning. Ed Jordanic, class of 89. Mike Coffey, class of 91. Good morning, guys. This obviously a tough morning after a heartbreaking loss. If you're listening to Dome and Domer for the first time, this is, as I said, the oldest Notre Dame podcast. We started this in 2006. And what we're trying to bring to you today is the fans' perspective, the same conversations that maybe you're having with your Notre Dame buddies, your roommates, your friends and family. That's what we're bringing to you today. We hope you enjoy it. If you do, like and subscribe to our channel. All right, so on our pregame show, we talked about our pick six factors that we thought would be important to the outcome of the game. Let's review those quickly. We said, hey, did we think a Notre Dame back would rush for over 100 yards? Obviously, we didn't get close to that. Eddie Jordanic didn't think we'd have a 100-yard rusher. The rest of us did. The running game never got going. Of course, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. If we rushed for over 150 yards as a team, we'd win the game. I think we got to 95. And again, the inability to run the ball, huge factor. Would CJ Carr in his first start have more TDs combined rushing and passing than turnovers? He did. And CJ Carr's performance, although certainly not perfect, was very encouraging. We'll come to that in a moment. Would we hold Miami's offense in check under 275, under 300? They were at about 330. And although, ultimately the defense didn't dominate for Notre Dame, Miami had enough success to get the win. Would our defense combine for six? I think we said 5.5. What was the over under on combined turnovers and sacks? Didn't get near that. Inability to create consistent pressure and havoc kept Miami in rhythm and ahead of the chains for most of the night. Would our special teams set up a score? They didn't, but my opinion, I thought special teams were solid and steady and did what we need them to do, which is, convert the easy opportunities. Okay, so let's get everybody's opinion generally on the game last night. Eddie Jordanic, we're going to start with you. Give us your thoughts on what you saw.
I thought we got bullied. I didn't think we were physical enough. I think the game was lost at the line of scrimmage. I had us scoring 23 points. We scored 24, and I thought that was going to be good enough to win. I don't remember hearing Jalen Sneed's name all night. Marcus Freeman, sort of sung the praises of how far his defensive line had come this past week at his press conference. They were pretty meh. So I was more disappointed in the defense and the lack of physicality. There was, some tackling issues. They had a lot of yards after initial contact. I didn't think the coordinator did them any favors. It seemed like it took us about an hour to realize that, Tyreek Hill Jr. was a good player and that we should probably pay him some attention. So, that's all the negatives.
Okay, let's pause you there, Eddie, for a minute. Let's hear from Mike Brammer.
I agree with you. I think it was a little disappointing you talked about this, Ed, before the show. Oftentimes what you think is going to be the strength preseason ends up not being. And I hope this isn't the case, but I was a little disappointed in the defensive line. It's interesting. Freeman made the comment that, when you're rushing four guys, you got to put pressure on the quarterback. So obviously that was their game plan. They didn't dial up a bunch of blitzes, at least that I remember. And so it seemed like they felt like they were going to get pressure with four guys and allow us with our athletes back there to cover them. And we never got any pressure whatsoever on Beck. And I think that was, to me, the difference in the game is the lack of pressure on the quarterback is what led to the loss. I was really excited, though, with CJ Carr. I'm impressed. I really liked what he did. He's got composure. Now, they didn't put him in situations where he was going to hurt himself. I mean, it was a pretty conservatively called game in that respect in terms of, the plays and what he did. But I really liked his composure and I liked what he brought to the table. And I think I think better things are coming from him. So I'm really excited about that. That was by far the best point.
Staying with the defense for a minute, I would agree. The just didn't get physical up front. We didn't control the line of scrimmage. And although, again, Miami 330 yards offense, I mean, you'd take that almost every game, right? But we just didn't dominate throughout the game. There were stretches where we got some, 3 and outs, and that felt good when we needed to. But Miami always seemed to be able to move the line of scrimmage when they absolutely needed to. Mike Coffey, your thoughts?
I have to say I wasn't really impressed with either coordinator in this game. The whole Mike Denbrock, a short pass is the same as a run. It's not. And the inability to get Jeremiah Love as involved as he should have been. If you have an inexperienced quarterback, and I'll say real quick, I agree with everyone on CJ Carr. Granted that there were a couple of youngster mistakes that you can get away with in high school that you can't get away with in college. And I think he's going to learn from that. But you have the best running back in the country, and he only gets 9-10 touches or something like that. And
Mike, let me jump on that for a minute. So I see, Jeremiah Love, obviously talented guy. He got last year, he averaged 10 carries a game and 11 and a half touches a game is what Love got. He got 14 last night. So I'm not sure I necessarily have a problem with that. And that's what I expect for the whole year. We've got a lot of talented guys, a deep backfield. I don't see Love getting 15 to 20 touches a game. I think it's going to be about what we saw. The other thing I would say is I personally am not going to be the guy that sits here and says, oh, the coordinators, the coaches. We have no idea what the game plan was intended to be, what happened on a particular play. Personally, for me, I can't stand second guessing the play calling in the main. There may be the occasional, run it or pass it in this moment, but I mean, come on, we are not analysts and we are not a practice, and so I'm never going to be that guy.
I understand that, but like when you're driving, you have momentum, you have 2nd and 2, and you throw that tunnel wide receiver screen, which I really hope they just throw that play away, because so many times they threw it and it either didn't work, got a little bit, or in this case, something really bad happened. I think you're putting a lot of pressure on a freshman quarterback when you're the best running back on the planet. Turn around, hand it to him. He can get you those 2 yards. And I agree, we don't necessarily know what the plan was, but any plan that includes that is not a plan that I like.
Well, those plays look good in the first drive, I'll say that. But Freeman did comment on that in the post-game remarks. So that was a run-pass option. Carr likely, they put him in a situation to have to make that choice. And to Freeman's credit, he said maybe we shouldn't have put him in that situation, giving him an option on the line of scrimmage. CJ Carr clearly read to pull it and throw it out to the screen. And in retrospect, Freeman and the staff are saying, yeah, maybe we should have not called an option play for him. So that's something to consider. But okay, CJ Carr, overall, I like what I saw.
No,
the quarterback comparison between the two quarterbacks, pretty close.
Yeah, over 200 yards. Not. I mean, that pick. Yeah, I mean, you like that one back, but I just thought he looked really good. I really was impressed.
Excuse me.
Better than Arch Manning, Ed? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean that's a low bar, but I mean he was better than Arch Manning.
There were several high-profile first-time starts, right, from top 10 teams with new quarterbacks, and overall, I particularly loved Carr's composure on the 65-yard completion to Eli Raridon. That impressed me.
Well, if Kenny Minshew better get ready to play, because if Denbrock's going to keep running Carr like that, he gets hit like a rag doll. Minshew's going to get a chance sooner than we think. I mean, that really surprised me. A couple times I thought Denbrock forgot who was wearing 13. He thought he still had last year's guy. Because I mean, I think it's an effective sort of weapon. But the whole CJ Carr thing, the only thing that bothered me is it seemed like, to go back to game planning, it seemed like Denbrock's game plan was to get CJ Carr ready to to focus on CJ Carr's development as a quarterback and to get him ready to carry a team. The objective should be to win the freaking football game, So I understand that Denbrock's trying to prove a point and help his quarterback by coming out with a bunch, with 6 consecutive throws, to start the game. Like I get that. But to me, I'm like Mike Sullivan. I don't really question play calling. I think it's all about execution. But a quarterback, if given a run pass option, is going to pass 9 out of 10 times. They're quarterbacks. They like to throw the ball. They're competitors. Oh, hell yes.
I think if that's the decision making from the quarterback, he's going to be on the bench, because when he has that option, I think he better be coached up to say, if you got this look, you do X. If you got the other look, you do Y. And if we got a guy that's just going to throw it 90% of the time, he's the wrong guy.
What was the remarks about Carr going into this? That he likes the bomb, he likes to make the play. I mean, I'd rather have that kind of aggressiveness. But the fact of the matter is, on the 2nd and 2 that Mike Coffey's talking about, he was throwing it to a guy in an orange jersey. The guy in the orange jersey was basically already behind the line of scrimmage in between 2 Notre Dame receivers, because the Notre Dame receiver had I think it was Greathouse, had completely whiffed on the play, right? So if you can't recognize that, that means that you're preordained to throw the ball.
But he's young, and that's what you do when you're young. You make those kind of mistakes. Yeah,
it's a mistake of aggression. Okay, I get it, and that's why Freeman said we probably shouldn't have had him in that position, put him in that situation, because they know that his tendency is aggression, which is not a bad tendency, or it's not a bad mindset. It's what we like about the kid and why he'll be successful. But it also can get you in trouble in a big game. And what I'm saying is that I thought the game was coached from an offensive perspective, from Denbrock's perspective. It was a quarterback-centric game plan, and that's what bugged me. Because to me, the objective should be to win the game, not to hasten CJ Carr's development so that he can be a Heisman contender and an All-American. And
Eddie, that's a huge.
We all hope that's
a
going to
huge
happen,
assumption.
but it's got to happen organically. We can't sacrifice wins to have it happen.
I'm not saying it was conscious, okay? I'm just saying that that's what it looked like. And I think that in this day and age, it's all about the quarterback. And, Denbrock's an offensive coordinator. He had Jaden Daniels. You fall in love with the position because we all agree that it's the straw that stirs the drink.
But he could be more comfortable doing that, right? Maybe that's the way he likes to call games, and he's more comfortable with a quarterback-centric approach like that. And so he's going to.
He wants to ratchet up that development as quickly as possible so that he can trust him as quickly as possible. And all I'm saying is let it play out over 6, 7, 8 games and win those freaking football games. And you just talked about the weapons that CJ Carr has. That's all we've been talking about. CJ Carr doesn't have to win the football game. He doesn't have to win the football game. He's got all these weapons. I'm sorry, but the game was not coached like that.
You mean called like that?
Called like that, coached like
that.
But the game plan that wasn't the game plan. That wasn't the calling. That wasn't the whatever. And I'm not saying that CJ Carr can't execute that plan to win the game. He can, but probably not in this first game.
Yeah. Listen, I thought 27-14. You had us at 24 points. I don't think the problem was the offense. I think we're burying the lead here. Our defense. Let me back up a little bit. I think Miami's really good, and I certainly had a little irrational exuberance in our defense's ability to stifle their offense. Their offensive line was good. They obviously have a very seasoned quarterback, and Miami executed. They played really well, so a lot of credit to Miami. But the problem was, as we discussed a few minutes ago, our front seven didn't really create any kind of disruption or dominate in a meaningful way.
Yeah. No, the only other thing that I saw, and this is the thing that just eats at my crawl like nothing playing Miami, but I really felt like they made some plays and we just didn't. I mean, there were some guys making some phenomenal plays like Daniels with that touchdown, and we just didn't. And I it seems like in the history of Notre Dame, Miami, that happens a lot where they're showing their athletes, they make plays and we didn't. I just didn't feel like we made any kind of great plays last night in my regard, and that's the way I saw it. I did. That was just a bit frustrating as for none of our playmakers to make any big plays.
Yeah, Bram, I would say that touchdown catch at the end of the first half was the play of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because, a fraction of an inch, and that's a pick or an incomplete, and maybe we get out of there with a field goal or no points. But when they got that and the ball to start the second half, I really felt like that was going to be a stolen possession, almost, if you will, and we were going to be in trouble. I love the fight we showed, the fact that we came back, tied the game, incredible. But that felt like a moment that really decided the outcome of the game. I think the 2nd and 2 interception and the one-handed catch, my 2 plays of the game. Anybody else?
Well, Marcus Freeman last year talked a lot about like winning the 8 minutes, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. I think this was an example of where Miami winning the 8 minutes got them the win for the game overall. Mike, I'd agree with you. I think those are the 2 biggest plays, and it's amazing that both of those plays, I think you'd have to say had a degree of luck involved. I mean, that was a spectacular one-handed catch for the touchdown. And the interception, as much as we don't like the play call, that ball did get kicked in the air 3 times before a Miami player came down. I mean, that could very easily have the ball could have ended up on the ground with an incomplete. We would have all said, what the hell kind of a play call was that? But then the game would have continued, and maybe in the great scheme of things, it wouldn't have mattered much, but obviously it did.
Coaches talk a lot about complementary football, and I thought that was not an example of it last night. And by that, I mean, it sort of reminded me of some not so great Kelly defenses where the defense was sort of a momentum killer. So, and by that, I mean, whether it was when we score, that's when you want your 3 and outs right after we score. Or you want your 6 or 7 and out, whatever. That just didn't happen last night. They moved the ball after we scored, most glaringly when we tied the game, and they got themselves into field goal range. But again, credit to Miami. Their offensive line won them the football game. They performed when it mattered the most. Their kicker, that would have been good from 65 yards.
That was a bomb.
He stepped up and won the game for them. And then when our offensive line needed to sort of, hold serve and give us a chance to win the game, they could not stop a 4 or 5 man rush right at the end. I mean, they gave Carr no time whatsoever. And did I see this morning that Knapp wasn't on the field in that last series? That he was cramping, and
I didn't see that.
He was having problems during the game. I know that. I couldn't say if he was there on the last drive. But I mean, I don't. The last drive was, we had no timeouts. That was just sort of desperation time. But Eddie, I'll push back a little bit. I think, our defense at the end of the first half, and obviously the game-winning drive, those 2 times when we needed them, Miami executed and got what they needed, and the defense didn't get off the field. But the defense did. I think there were 4 drives in a row where the defense got off the field. That's what allowed us to come back and tie the game. So a little bit of a mixed
15
bag.
yards in those 4 possessions. 15 total yards.
Remember that I agree with you, but this was really close to being a Cristobal special. I mean, they went into a shell there when they got the 2 touchdown lead.
They did.
And even when they just had a 1-score lead, they were very conservative. I mean, Tony didn't touch the ball in the 4th quarter, and maybe only touched it a couple times in the second half. So you can also make the argument, the defense, they played better. They got some stops or whatever, but also, Cristobal is a conservative coach. He's an old lineman. He obviously is building his team from the inside out. It showed. They played very well. Their front 7 played pretty well. Their offensive line played pretty well. But, I think you have to sort of also, sort of admit that they had a very different sort of offensive approach in the second half than they did the first half.
Well, I'm going to give our defense credit for getting off the field 4 straight drives to allow us to get back in the game. You can blame it on their coach if you want. I'm going to take a different view. So I do think big play in the game, though, that was a momentum killer back to that 2nd and 2 call, right? Defense had just gotten us a 3 and out, and then we turn it back over to them. and yet we still came back and tied the game. So let's talk about some bigger picture issues. I think what I'm counting on this year is the Freeman culture and the culture of winning and that he's developed. And even though we didn't get the win, I saw that fight and I saw that composure, and that gives me I'm not hitting the panic button at all. Big picture views from anybody else.
I think that's become a hallmark, if you will, of the Freeman era. I mean, his teams can get down, and I don't have the stats in front of me, obviously, but they don't collapse. They stay with it. If they have, if there's any chance for them to come back and win, they're going to try to take advantage of that. You don't see Freeman teams losing their cool over the long periods. Like when they went down 21-7, I mean, I'll say a Brian Kelly team, we would have been looking at like the 41-8 we had a couple of years ago. I mean, those teams did not have a lot of intestinal fortitude. Marcus Freeman coaches his teams to have intestinal fortitude, to take the punch and then come back and land a couple punches of their own. And I think over Freeman's tenure, that's going to win us a lot more games than it loses.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think that, just at the end, imagine the conversation we'd be having right now if we tied the football game and then won it in overtime. So, and then maybe Ed would agree with Sully that, man, we stuffed them for 4 possessions in a row. So anyways, but yeah, look, I think the thing is that the program is in a great spot. We know it. We've got talent. We've got guys, depth. We're going to be back. It's just going to be a uphill battle for us. CJ is going to have 1 game under his belt, which is great, but he's now going to face A&M that are going to come at him with stuff he's never seen before. Elko's a great coach. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure on us next game, but I like where we're at right now. And I feel great. I think we played really well last night, just didn't go our way.
It's easy week 1, right? Everybody rushes to broad sweeping conclusions. And so, you got to be guarded against that. I think Miami is a pretty good football team. I think we, competed very well on the road against the top 10 team. Could they turn out to be imposters? Sure. Could we? Sure. Right. Week 1, it's hard to know, but it feels like that was a good matchup between 2 very good teams. Eddie, some big picture thoughts or observations from you?
Well, I think we have to remember what the standard is now, right? The standard is championship delayed, not denied, not delayed, or delayed, not whatever.
We got you.
Yeah. So that's why, I hope they're disappointed, and the same way that we're disappointed. I think that they have to play better defense if that's where they want to be, if they want to win a couple games in the playoff and compete for national championship again. I think they have to block better at the point of attack of the offensive line and protect better if they want to compete for a national championship. So to me, we've been told that that's the standard by Pete Bavacqua, by Marcus Freeman, by the captains. So that's what I'm going on. And until I sort of, we'll know it when we see it, but that was not it last night. Miami is a very good team. They played really well. Are they going to win a national championship this year? I put them outside the top 4 or 5. So, that's my big picture. I mean, it's tougher this morning to make the college football playoff for Notre Dame than it was yesterday morning, right?
Yep.
We have a loss now. So, yes, losses aren't as meaningful in this new era, but 3 losses are meaningful. 2 losses are meaningful. And so we're in a little bit of a tougher position. I completely agree with what everybody's saying about culture and about sort of, backs against the wall, et cetera, et cetera. But, at the end of the day, we got to play better than that. Or we'll lose 2 more games this year. I don't think that level of play is going to cut it 2 weeks from now. And I don't think that, I think that it could also, turnovers are a funny thing, right? you get a couple against NC State and suddenly you're in a dogfight in the last 10 minutes. You get a couple against BC or Pitt or Boise or, whatever.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Or Arkansas
Yeah.
on the road.
That's going to be a
Exactly.
tough place
right.
to play. Yeah.
As we talked about, like the schedule is challenging top to bottom, right? And a couple of the marquee games that really get your attention, but you don't have as much margin for error because you got the loss already. And
Right.
So there's no question, do we control our own destiny? Yes, right? If we're 10-2, 11-1, we're going to be in the playoffs, but now you've got one loss hung on you already, and it just creates a little more urgency, which is not a bad thing for a football team to feel that. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame sports podcast on the planet. We'll be back. This is an open date, so we won't have our normal schedule of Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, but we'll come back on Thursday and check in with, a little more talk about the Miami game, look at some individual performances that we liked or didn't like, and look ahead to Texas A&M a little bit. For Mike Brammer, Mike Coffey, and Ed Jordanek, I'm Mike Sullivan. We'll see you next time on Dome and Domer.